You already know that thumbnails are important to increase the number of clicks on your YouTube videos. In fact, the two most important elements to get more clicks on your YouTube videos are your titles and your thumbnails. Now, I already just recently did a video on how to write more clickable titles. So I will link to that in the description below. Watch it together with this video, which is all about thumbnail do's and don'ts, and use these two videos together in conjunction to increase your click-through rate, which is going to get you more views on your YouTube videos. So inside this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 thumbnail do's and don'ts that you should be doing when you are thinking about designing your thumbnails. And do not worry about whether you are a designer or not. I am not. And you can learn all of these simple tricks even if you are not a designer. So, are you ready? Hey go-getter, I'm Salma Jafri, and on this channel, I'm going to help you increase your visibility, credibility, and profitability with YouTube. So if you are interested in that, then be sure to click the red subscribe button and the bell icon, and let's begin. Now, thumbnails are kind of like a minefield. If you are using a generic software like Canva, let's say, and you go and look at the YouTube template designs for thumbnails, those are not the things that you should be copying as is, because oftentimes, even though these templates get the dimensions right for the thumbnails, so yes, you can use the exact dimensions, but the elements inside it are not really very specific to how YouTube thumbnails work. And the reason I say that is because they're very specific do's and don'ts for YouTube thumbnails. In fact, they are so specific that sometimes things that work on a YouTube thumbnail are not going to work like on an Instagram post or on a Facebook cover video even, right? So they're very, very specific to the YouTube audience and what that audience expects to see on YouTube. So let's get into the 5 do's and also the don'ts of how to create clickable YouTube thumbnails. The first don't, which is the mistake that I see people making, is that they do not use high contrast colors. So the thumbnail bleeds into each other. The font is dark and the background is dark. So you cannot read it, right? That's an example of a low contrast color. Also, a light colored font on a light colored background. Again, not readable. So you want to use high contrast colors. High contrast colors are on the opposite end of the color wheel, typically, although you don't always have to do that. But high contrast colors are typically light versus dark, bright versus pastel, right? So you want to look at a color wheel and pick colors from the opposite, generally from the opposite end, and make them high contrast. And of course, you can get data on what color combinations work best. In fact, I'd refer you to Canva's color guide to do that and get some idea about what font and color and background combinations are recommended and what actually work together. So if you're not a designer, get some help on using color combinations that have been proven to work, but make sure that your thumbnails are high contrast. The second most common mistake I see people making is putting too many words on their thumbnails. Now, the first thing I want to say about words on thumbnails is that if you can actually make a thumbnail without any text on it, that would be amazing, because the thumbnail can then go together with your title and kind of paint a visual picture, whereas your title whereas your title forms the textual picture. And so they can kind of come together and tell your viewer what your video is about. This works especially well in industries where visuals are important: traveling, photography, cooking, crafting. So you can actually show the end product. Make sure you show a beautiful image of that beautiful dish that you've cooked, or that beautiful sweater that you've knitted, or this beautiful place that you're visiting. Because visuals, beautiful visuals, what's that saying? They're worth 1,000 words. Yeah, okay. You get the idea, right? Or you get the picture. Now, if you must use text on your video titles like I do, right? The rule of thumb is 3 to 5 words max. So you do not want to use more than 3 or 5 words on your YouTube thumbnails. And you also don't want to make them really teeny tiny or very small, which we'll talk about in the next do's and don'ts. So bear with me here. But you want to make them large enough. I typically recommend at least bigger than 30 points. So when you're looking at font sizes, bigger than 30 points. Typically a lot bigger. And when you have only 3 to 5 words, you have more room to play around on your thumbnail, size, and then you can actually create these 3 to 5 words in a more readable, friendly format. The third mistake I see people make is designing their thumbnails on a nice, large, big screen and forgetting that your YouTube audience is probably on their phones and they're probably seeing your thumbnail in like a teeny tiny little form, okay? So the trick that I recommend for creating your thumbnails is, okay, fine, go ahead and create it in that big screen, but then size it down to about 20% or so and see if it still makes sense in that smaller format. So the mistake is that people are not designing for a mobile friendly format, and what you want to do is make sure that you are designing thumbnails for a mobile friendly format, because let's just face it, most people are watching YouTube on their cell phones. Truth. So you want to size down your actual thumbnail into that smaller percentage, no matter what program you are using to create thumbnails. And then what the thing that you're looking for is you want to make sure that the picture is easy to see. Any text that you have on your thumbnail is easy to read. If it is not, cut it out. So many people have a problem with cutting text out, and they want these branded elements and they want their name or the name of their show. Unnecessary. Just stick to 3 to 5 words that describe the content of your video and ruthlessly cut out any other irrelevant text. You do not need your channel name. You do not need your show's name. You do not need to add in all this extra bit of episode number, this, that, or the other. No, be ruthless. All right. So the fourth mistake that I see people making is to not choose an image that does the talking for you. People will choose an image that just is hard to comprehend. It's too small. It doesn't show. Let's take yoga as an example, okay? So when you are creating a YouTube channel thumbnail or a YouTube video thumbnail and you want to show a specific yoga pose, what is the most important thing here? Is it the scenery? No. Is it the background? No. Is it the yoga pose? Yes. If that isn't coming through loud and clear, your thumbnail is not going to work. Simple as that. Make sure that the subject of your video is the subject of your thumbnail and highlight that. Everything else falls away. Everything else is inconsequential. Everything else is noise. It's a distraction. Make sure that the topic of your video is the thing that is the focus of your thumbnail picture. Make it the focus. Make it bigger, make it obvious, make it very, very clear. And anytime you're thinking about, designing a thumbnail, clarity wins over cuteness. So don't try to be cute, don't try to use slang, don't try to be clever. Try to be clear as possible. Clarity is always going to win you the click over any of the other superfluous details. And the final test that you want to do with your thumbnails, and the biggest mistake I see people making, is to not use the 3-second rule, which is also called the blink test. Okay, so here's how it works. You look at your thumbnail, or you ask a friend or a colleague or somebody in your house to take a look at your thumbnail for 3 seconds. So they blink, they look, and then they turn away. And then you ask them, okay, what was that thumbnail about? Okay, so in 3 seconds, if they do not get the gist of your thumbnail and what your thumbnail is about, fail. So you go back to the drawing board. You want to be able to have your thumbnail pass the 3-second blink test. 3 seconds, look, blink away. And then you should be able to tell what your thumbnail is about almost instantly, because that's how you want thumbnails to work, because that's typically the viewing behavior of your audience. They are scrolling through content really, really fast. They barely give it a few seconds to decide whether they want to click on this thumbnail or not. And so you want to put your thumbnail through the 3-second test to mimic the behavior of your actual viewers. Which of these thumbnail do's and don'ts was the most eye-opening one for you and the one that you're going to implement in your next YouTube thumbnail? Let me know in the comments below. And then go and watch this video next on my ultimate custom thumbnail design tutorial, which you want to follow to the letter to design an amazing YouTube thumbnail. I'll see you in the next one.